Welcome, Danny Batten.
Number one. You win.
Hey guys, I'm Si and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 82, and tonight we are going to be talking to our guest in just a while. He's going to join us shortly, as well as last night's UFC 264, which was full of talking points and some incredible fights along the way. But we'll have a little chat about that in our new time slot to accommodate the foosball. But the show is live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, A.C.E Podcast Nation. Of course, you're home to many great shows and series featuring top guests, expert analysts and more. So do give us a follow on social media, subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the bell for notifications. And of course, you can get your audio podcasts. Just search A.C.E Podcast Nation, over 460 odd shows on various subjects. But joining me as ever, first and foremost, is former Cage Warriors champion, UK MMA legend, Mr. Daniel Batten. How are you, mate?
Yeah, you're right. So, listeners, wow, we had some events, didn't we? It's been a good one.
Yeah, Jesus.
Interesting.
It's just incredible stuff, mate. It really was.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to WBC Commonwealth champion Gavin Gwynne is going to be joining us shortly. He's been delayed slightly, so he should be with us in about 10 or 15 minutes with us with a bit of luck, but we should be fine. But obviously, we're in a different time slots and all, so it feels a bit weird to be doing a podcast at 5 o'clock in the evening. But I suppose we'll have to talk a little bit about the football, Danny. Are you looking forward to it?
Of course, yeah. I don't mind getting a bit patriotic at certain times. I mean, I'm not a massive football fan, but I do take interest in football when England are playing in the Euros or the Worlds.
Yeah, there you go. That's all we need to say about it. We don't need to talk about it anymore. But yeah, so we had UFC 264 last night, mate. Incredible stuff. I mean, we'll talk about it in a bit more detail later, but what really stood out for you throughout the show? Like, there was just some great fights. The Sean O'Malley fight was just insane. Just the amount of damage that Moutinho took, and Sean O'Malley is just sensational to watch, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolute sniper, precision striker completely, and he had to demonstrate some good cardio because the guy just kept coming. Amazing. And so, you know, it's not very often that you would say it was an amazing performance on someone that gets hit so much, but the guy performed amazingly considering the circumstance that he was put in on short days' notice and the amount of strikes that received and how he just kept coming. It actually made it entertaining.
Yeah. Oh, yes. But and as I just said, to speak of the devil, the champ is here, as they say. So WBC, there he is. WBC, should I say? Commonwealth lightweight champion. The Murtha Mexican. Go on.
Just the Commonwealth champion it is, yeah.
Is it? There we go, Commonwealth champion. The Murtha Mexican. You all right, buddy?
Yeah, good, boys. Yeah, I'm good.
So, yes, indeed. Gavin Gwynne, really looking forward to having a chat with you, mate. Obviously, you could check out, I think I did an unscripted, uncensored with Gavin. I don't know, it was quite a while ago, well over a year ago, when the channel was first getting going, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was back last year. I think it might have been the start of lockdown, was it?
I think so, yeah, it might have even been before that. That last year has killed me for trying to work out when things were, because it's the lockdown's just like a blank, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Gav, do you watch MMA, mate?
No, not really, but I obviously I watch like Conor Mcgregor and people like that.
Everyone does, doesn't they?
Like Jack Shaw, like the Welsh boys. I'll support the Welsh boys and things like that. Like, but I'm not like, I don't really.
Not bang into it, like, yeah.
Nah. I like any sort of fighting. So if it's on, I'll watch it. But I'm not getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I know. It is brutal the times that it's on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It was just brutal last night from start to finish. It got to be said. But let's talk a bit about you, Gav, first and foremost. So I think when I spoke to you before, you weren't champion at the time. And I think it was just after you fought Joe Cordini, I think, going off my memory. And my memory is shocking, so I could be very wrong. But talk to me a bit about that journey from sort of that fight to becoming the Commonwealth champion.
Yeah, so my first loss was to Joe Cordina. We boxed on a Sky box office show in the O2 in London. Like, it was a massive event, my first like massive show. I lost a very close fight on points to him. It was a great fight, but obviously Joe's a great fighter. So I took some positives from that and then bounced back with a knockout win against another Olympian in Caesar Abdon, I think his name is.
Right.
I knocked him out in a round, and then obviously COVID hit then. We got offered a fight on the fight camp, or the first fight camp in Eddie Hearn's back garden. I took a big loss, a big knockout loss to James Tennyson, who's a phenomenal puncher. Like, I don't know how many knockouts he got. He got 26 or 24 knockouts, I think it is. Like, it's mental, and he's knocking out people who are like European level and people like that. Like, so, that was a tough loss to take. Like, that was a bit of like pill to swallow, sort of speak, sort of thing. And I thought, I don't know, I didn't know what I was doing in the sport then. After that, and then Tony had a word with me and said, "Look, you've only lost to boys who like fringe level, like fringe world level. So we're just gonna get back in the gym, work on things." And that's what we done. And I went into another fight against an unbeaten fighter, massive underdog, and stopped him in 7 rounds. Like, so it just goes to show that if you just can't stop believing, really.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Like, whether it's MMA or boxing, the fight game generally, because I'm assuming, like, we've spoken to a few fighters who have, gone into fights and beaten. You feel, because you're unbeaten, you've got plenty of wins below, you feel, almost invincible. You're training hard, you're doing all the right things. And then when you do get that first loss, it can be difficult to adjust and take it in. Like, how difficult is it? Like, because obviously you listen to all the boxing MMA coaches, a lot of them, they'll say you learn, you either win or you learn. And I guess you learn more, I'm guessing, from, fights you lose than fights you win. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, 100%. Like, you can see what mistakes went wrong and what you could have done right through camp and things like that. So, like, and then you try and rectify them mistakes, and improve then in your next fight. And I think it goes in like MMA or boxing. You'll always see a fighter box 10 times better coming off a loss than you will a boxer coming off like a win, like an easy knockout win sort of thing.
What was it like for you, like training in COVID and lockdown and all that sort of thing as well? But then after that as well, like Eddie Hearn's back garden, talk to me about a bit about that show, because that's very different to anything you do anywhere else, I would imagine.
Obviously, like, that was the first lockdown, so I really struggled to train for that fight. Obviously the gyms weren't open and things like that, but then we were allowed the last 4 weeks we were allowed to go in the gym to do pad work and sparring, but we wasn't even allowed to spar, but we had to do it. So we brought in a couple of boys, but literally I didn't spar much for that camp at all. I'm not saying I could have won it if I did had a tidy camp, but like we didn't.
It's difficult, isn't it, if you've got no camp whatsoever to go into a fight. Like,
that's it. And I didn't want to turn the fight down. Like, I had no money coming in whatsoever. I wasn't working, so it was like on one hand, it was like I shouldn't have really took the fight, but then on another hand, like I had to take it. Do you know what I mean? It was like I got food to put on the table, so it is what it is. It's one of them mistakes you do in life, but you just got to learn from it.
100%. And like we've talked a bit about like UK MMA fighters, like if like with the MMA scene, like unless you get that big UFC deal, and even if you get that UFC deal, you're not always making, you know, thousands and thousands of pounds. So like a lot of fighters, and I think people don't realize this, there's a lot of boxers, a lot of MMA fighters, they got to work around training as well. And if you're depending on like, I don't know, whatever, like self-employed work in something like lockdown, and you can't fight, you can't train, you can't work, there's no money coming in, and it's difficult to judge anything then, isn't it? Because you're worried about real life problems rather than, you know, your next fight or training and looking how you can progress your career. But like Danny, seen it, like Gav said, he struggled a bit with the loss and kind of where he was within boxing. Like, how difficult is it for fighters sometimes from the mental side to deal with losses, particularly if they've previously been like undefeated? Sorry, couldn't get my words out.
Yeah, I think largely it depends on personalities. So you could get fighters that put themselves under pressure because they're getting a string of undefeated, wins on their record, and once you get expectations of you, that can put you under pressure. So that it can work both ways. And then likewise, if you start getting a loss and then you get a second loss, I've had it once in my career where I had 3 losses in a row. You also put yourself under pressure of like, what's going on here, and you start doubting yourself. But it's largely based on your outlook and, like I say, personalities and stuff to get over it and keep pushing on. And how people go about that, everyone has their different ways. But I agree with Gavin. I think once you've had a loss, you do make changes or bigger changes to your game, and you do paste in any holes that you have in your game. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the next one, of course, because everyone's training hard to beat each other. But that's the beauty of the sport. I don't think anyone enjoyed doing their sport if they was guaranteed to win each time. It kind of like ruins the whole, process of what competing's all about. But losses are hard. I mean, anyone that's competing, particularly
get used to it tonight, level, Danny. Get used to losing tonight. Just to say.
We'll see. Losing hurts. I remember going home and crying about it, like a sore, almost like a sore loser. So upset at losing. But then there's different ways to lose. You can lose on bad judges' decisions. I think this can have a huge effect as well. You can lose because you're fit.
If you feel begrudged or whatever, I imagine that makes it a bit more difficult then, doesn't it? Absolutely,
can make it all the worse. Or losing against someone that you had beef with. I imagine they're really, really bad scenarios. I've never had that myself, but I try to put myself in the position where you're getting a lot of bad talk leading up to a fight, and it gets personal. Then you lose. Like a good example is Luke Shanks. Can you imagine how he felt? He's so confident going in and really underperformed against Hadley. And it must have been.
It was personal as well between the two of them, wasn't it? And he lost convincingly. And
and I know what he's like. I know what he's like as a personality, and he must have really. It must have really devastated him for days. He must have been so angry himself. And so it boils down to a lot of things. I mean, one of the things happened to me, but I pulled off the win miraculously, was not being fit enough. And this is something that I've experienced with my students, where they're like, come away from the fight saying, I was better than this guy. I knew I could beat him. I just burnt out. I got tired because their training prep didn't go to plan, or as I've seen it before, you do the weight cut wrong. I mean, this can have a big decisive effect on how you perform. There's lots of different ways of looking at how people receive this loss down to their personalities and how they lose. That can be a lot of it. I've got a little question for you, Gavin. How much confidence do you have in judges? In boxing, I think I don't know what the stats are, but I think in boxing there's probably a lot more finishes than there are in MMA.
That surprises
probably
me.
Percentage-wise. Yeah.
That really surprises me.
You know, do you have confidence in the judging from your personal experience? Because on the world stage, sometimes you know, me and Si have shaken our heads like in utter shock at some of the decision making. Does this worry you?
Yeah, I think more so boxing. Like if you're a away fighter, you're like 4 rounds down before you start.
Right.
Like in my last fight, if it went the distance, I would have never got the nod, and I won every round bar the first round. So and then on the even the commentators, they were trying to swear or the other kids doing, and I was thinking, and then I watched it back and I was thinking, what the hell were they watching? And
you see that a lot though with commentators. They will go towards one particular fighter in both sports. I've seen it.
One of my gym mates, Lee Selby, was fighting for a world title eliminator. That was on, I think it was just before Christmas or just after Christmas. And he outboxed the guy. I thought he won by 4 or 5 rounds. And the commentary all the way through was the other guy. And I was thinking, what the hell? What was he watching? Like, but it's just the way it is. Like, we just got to go and get the knockout, don't know.
Take it out of their hands, I guess.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Gav, as well. Like, you mentioned the low of how you felt like, you know, you weren't sure where you stood in boxing and stuff. To go from that low to being a champion, like, talk to us a bit about that and the moment when when you knocked him out in the was his 7th round, you said, wasn't it? Like that, as well as, you know, the adrenaline, the excitement, the pride, that's also got to be like a massive weight off your shoulders when you've had a proper camp this time and you've gone and won the title, bring it home, as it were. I saw the video of you coming home actually with with your belts, like
with my boy carrying the belts in through the door, but yeah, like I went through a bad time after that knockout loss. Like I didn't want to be seen by anyone. It was just do you know when you're telling everyone, oh yeah, I'm gonna win this, I'm gonna do this, and then you end up getting stopped. Like it was hard to take. Like, and I was just like, oh, in a lull. And my missus said to me, what are you doing? I wasn't training. I was going out drinking with the boys. It wasn't me. Like, I'm not that type of person. So I just needed to kick up the arse. And my trainer rang me and he said, look, you got to get back in the gym. So I just got back in the gym, got back in the rhythm. And he just kept on telling me, look, something will come off this loss. Now people will want to fight you now because you just got stopped and things like that. And it did. A massive fight for myself, and I really got up for it because in my head I was telling myself, if I can't beat these kind of boys, it's no point me boxing. That's what I was telling myself in my head when I was training.
It's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, though, isn't it? That.
Yeah, but I needed it. I needed that sort of pressure, sort of thing. And honest to God, I was training 2-3 times a day, and I was coming home. I was just absolutely drained from training. I jumping in the bed. I was just going straight to sleep. It was the hardest I've ever trained, and yeah, I just felt fantastic going in there. And I don't know if it's the same for you, Dan, but like you just have a good feeling about. No, sometimes you have a bad feeling, like before the weigh-in and things like that. It's just something don't feel right, and you don't perform or something like that. But everything felt like. Oh, it just went perfect, like, and the weight cut and everything went perfect. I even had a cup of green tea in the night as well before I went to sleep. So I had to cut about 3 pounds in the morning. That's all. I done a bit more than that, but it was great. Like, it was fantastic. Like, and the feeling when he like because he turned around from me as well. He didn't want no more, so he turned his back on me. So I went to throw a shot, and the referee jumped in, and I was just like, oh, just what a feeling. But it was no crowd there. The only downside, there was no crowd there. But obviously, when I got home, then everyone was like congratulating me and things like that. So yeah, but what a feeling! What a feeling!
Indeed, yes, mate. It it was incredible to watch, and me and Danny have talked about a lot about the lack of fans throughout lockdowns and COVID and stuff, and like obviously we talk a lot about MMA and boxing, but we talk a lot about MMA, particularly like the UFC. And when those first UFC shows came, like the Fight Island ones and this, like you didn't know what to expect with no fans. And I think after that first week, we were like, oh, I don't know. I quite like you could hear the shots and you can really hear the power behind the shots, whether it's boxing or MMA. You can hear it without the crowd. You can hear the coaches talking to the fighters, which is unique in itself. So it did, from a viewer point of view, it does give you like a completely unique feeling of watching it, and it gives you a different way of looking at the fights. And I think I found I was concentrating more on the fights as well, and I was less influenced by the commentators. You didn't have the crowd kind of go in with the momentum of the fight, if you like. I found that I was focusing more on watching it and stuff. But then equally, I watched like Conor McGregor walk into the ring, to the cage last night, and I'm like, yeah, we need fans in these stadiums because there's nothing like it. It's incredible. But like, what is it like for a fighter, particularly? We've spoken to a few footballers over the last year or so about playing with no fans and stuff like that. What's it like for a fighter to make that walk without the roar of the crowd or the boos if you're in a place where you're the away fighter, if you like?
Well, the first time I done it was in a back garden. Well, I say a back garden. It's a mansion, but it's got acres of land. So it was like a house behind me, all lit up and everything like that. And then it was fans there. It was I'd say about 50 people there. So it was a few people there, but it's not the same walking out and you've got all your fans cheering, and it's just eerie. It's like,
yeah,
it's not nice. Like, but the second time it was the Reebok Stadium in Bolton.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like where they have food and everything else. It was like a small enclosed space.
All right, yeah.
So it was like being in like a gym. So
yeah,
that was a bit better, and I think that it was about 150 people there. So that was a bit better. You could hear people shouting and things like that. But we just need need fans back. Like that's what gets you going as a fighter. Like the fans cheering when you got to dig down deep. The fans are going nuts. It just gives you that fire in your belly, I think.
Yeah, I think it's especially like I'm sure all fighters have got their own followings and stuff. Like I know like people like Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, they've got a massive Scouse following who follow him everywhere. But like Welsh fighters, particularly boxers and MMA, the fans follow you everywhere. So like if you're fighting up in York Hall in London, there'll be hundreds. You're fighting in wherever, the Welsh fans will follow. And
yeah.
It's without that wall of support, especially if you're in a place where the fighter you're fighting is from that area and he's got a big following himself. That hearing those Welsh fans, I would imagine, makes a big difference to you, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, massively. Like when I phoned up in London, I think I sold like 500-600 tickets online. People messaging me. I had my missus talking out in the end because I just didn't want the hassle of selling tickets, and because it was a pay-per-view event, obviously it was all online, so they ended up they couldn't give me tickets. They give me 20 tickets for friends and family and things like that, but everyone was gutted and they couldn't get tickets because it was Lomachenko, Luke Campbell on the undercard of that, so it sold out within like a couple of days. It was sold out.
Yeah.
So that was a gutting feeling, but like everywhere else, like they come in their hundreds. Like it's like the small Welsh Valley villages, like they all stick together. Like fair play to them. Like they'll come and watch. I don't know if you fight, you got chickens fighting, whatever. They'll come and support it. So, it's brilliant. Like the support I get, like, and all the people like from my community now. Like I got a lot of sponsors who sponsor me now, and just so I can train full time as well. Like, so I can't thank them all enough.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, 100%.
Is amazing. Like
The Wales is it's a special part of the world, mate. I don't know, I know we're probably biased, but I just think it's God's country, mate, isn't it? It's the place to be. Sorry, Dan. But, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, well, I like.
Don't all be English.
But you know what? I love the patriotism. It's great. I think there's nothing wrong with sticking together. I was actually going to ask you, Gavin. I can see on your record that you largely fought in Wales, and do you find that there's, obviously venue to venue can have a different atmosphere, but do you find this is at all possibly detrimental to your performance by fighting out of Wales, or and even forethinking, if you think ahead and you might get big opportunities where you're going to have to possibly fight out in the States or a complete other country, how do you think you'll deal with that? Is that something that you've thought ahead about?
Yeah, like obviously it's hard to get, like, with boxing. So as when you first start off, you're with a local promoter, and they normally got to sell tickets to box, otherwise you're not going to earn any money, sort of thing. So that's why I've always boxed in Wales. And then when that bigger opportunity came, it was obviously in England, and I couldn't say no to it. But you get that, like what I was saying earlier on, you get the judge's favour. Then if I had boxed like these boys in Wales, I would have probably, I don't know, I would have probably got more like leaning to me on the judges scorecard sort of thing. But I've thought about like fighting in the States and things like that. Like I'd love to do that. I'd love to fight in Las Vegas. Like that's one dream of mine. Like I'd love to do that. I've been out there twice. I've been out to LA on training camps twice. That's fantastic. Like, but I'd love to fight in America one day. That's like, that would be my dream, really.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I'm going to go through to a couple of questions in the live chat, because we've got a couple of different ones on different subjects as we've been going along. But I've been really, really enjoying listening to you, Gav. I've got to be honest, I get carried away and then I forget to go to the questions. But right, there was one question particularly about sparring, which interested me. So Donna said, have you ever, and I suppose you could ask both of you this, have you ever been or seen like sparring which has turned a bit nasty?
Go on, Dan, you answer first.
Yeah, numerous times. I've even had it with myself over the years of training. But it is a rarity, I'm pleased to say. It really is a rarity. I think most people that are in the combat sports, particularly, now MMA, I would say, is pretty advanced in its level now. But boxing, even more so. I think in boxing, this is actually a good question to put to Gavin as well. Something that I was going to ask earlier is that, your training camps, or you always hear about that people train on the world stage. They bring in specific sparring partners to try to emulate their opponent. Okay, I was kind of curious, not to say you're of a lower level, but we can only really relate to what we see, in the news and what have you about, Lennox Lewis back in the day, drafting in people short and stocky when he was preparing for, Mike Tyson. Is that something that still happens, with your levels? Is this something that you do and you feel you draw benefit from? And if you don't have that experience, will you do that when you approach high levels as you move up the ranks? Is this something you'll be interested in doing?
Yeah, we brought in a couple of sparring partners and things like that. I think you need it. Like sometimes you got tricky southpaws, like I did last time. So we brought in a couple of tricky southpaws to obviously get the work off, so you get in the shots off what you would do in a fight, sort of thing. Maybe you'll have a shorter guy in the next fight, so you bring in short, fast hands, good head movement. So you got to try and pick out all the things that the fighter he does good, and then you got to try and pick out a sparring partner to try and mimic that sort of thing. We've been really lucky though, with our gym. Like people are always wanting to come to our gym. So I only got me and Tony will have a sit down and we'll go through names of sparring partners and things to bring down, and he'll get in contact with them, and they're more than happy to come down and help. And I would do the same for any other fighter as well if they needed my help. I know Ben Davidson texted me a couple of times to go up and spar Josh Taylor, but I was out of the gym at the time, so I was gutted. And I really couldn't go up there sparring and not be fit. So that was a gutting feeling, and that was a kick in the arse really, to say, look, you're going to be in the gym all the time, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously Josh has gone on to do some incredible things recently. Go on. I was just going to say, on like with that question, you'll have your regular sparring partners and stuff.
Yeah.
Have you got like a particular, when you look back at the different people you've sparred with, whether it's your regular partners or people you've brought in to prepare for fights, got like a favourite who you've enjoyed having a bit of a tumble with?
Yeah. So when I first turned professional, I don't know if you know Gary Buckland, ex-British featherweight champion, one hell of a fighter, fought Gary twice. So my first ever session down the gym, Tony said, "Oh, do you fancy some sparring?" So I was like, "Yeah, go on." I didn't want to say no, like I didn't want to say, I'm a chicken shit. So I jumped in, and he said, "Oh, you're sparring Gary?" I was like, "Oh my god, British champion!" I haven't had a pro fight yet, so I was bricking it. But literally, it was like one of the boys who was there watching it was the guy who sorts all my sponsors out, Phil Whaley, and he always says to me, if I could go back in time and watch any fight, it'd be you and Gary Buckland spar. We only done 6, but it was like toe-to-toe war. And I was chatted after like 3 rounds. I was just standing there, just letting it.
Excellent. I like that. And Reese asked, does fighting in the crowd, does that make a difference to fighters? So he uses the example, like in football, it can make a big impact on results. It can distract the players, things like that. Because you'll always see, especially the big fights, you'll see like there's always like pissed up guys in there who end up having some sort of scrap. Sometimes it turns to nothing. Sometimes it turns into something a bit bigger. But like, do you even notice that as a fighter when you're fighting, or is that like you don't even pay any attention to it?
Do you want to answer that, Dan, as well?
Yeah. I've had it a few times where
you had that big one in Cage Warriors, didn't you? Back
yeah,
in the day?
there was that one. Yeah, that shut down the whole thing. The whole area got shut down by.
Yeah, mate, I think they wanted to shut down MMA in the UK at that point.
Yeah, it was not a good time. It was a dark time in MMA because we're still trying to get ourselves established and trying to get respect.
It was trying to be legitimized as a sport at the time.
That's right.
It
was, yeah.
Things
so
like that.
Dodgy times. But I went to a venue probably only about 4 years ago in London where something really kicked off. And it was actual football fans that were supporting one of their fighters. And these guys were sort of like the older football fans. They was in their 50s. But they kicked off and they threw chairs about. It was absolute disaster in there. But the security all got together. They turfed them out, and the fight progressed. We just had it was in between the rounds, and it took about 3 or 4 minutes before the fight continued. But the fight continued on, and it didn't look like it bothered the fighters, to be honest. But I've never had it in my own personal situation, so I can't really comment on myself. But I'd imagine it wouldn't bother me too much. I think when you're fighting, Gavin would probably agree with this. You're in the zone. You do what you're trained to do. And what happens outside ain't going to influence a lot of what's going on inside. When you're in that ring, there's 3 people in there, but 2 that matter. And you just concentrate on what's in front of you. Yeah, I'd have to find you going to automatic pilot. And I don't think it would perturb me too much.
Fair enough. Gaz asked, he said, is it harder to get opponents when you're undefeated? Because he said, obviously, you mentioned earlier about when you came off a loss, people were, your manager said, or your coach said that, people will want to fight you now.
Yeah.
Is that because is it harder? We've talked about Jack Shaw a lot. Obviously, he's still undefeated, but one of the problems he had in Cage Warriors isn't, and I would assume, I don't know, I would assume he's having the similar problem in the UFC, is that a lot of the fighters who are sort of at that same level in terms of the rankings, they don't want to fight him. So it's difficult because you always have pullouts and you're constantly waiting and trying to sort these fights out. Is that the same in boxing?
Yeah, 100%, and more so now. Kids these days, they don't want to lose their unbeaten record. I don't know what the stigma is about having an unbeaten record. Not a lot of fighters do it. It was like obviously Joe Calzaghe, Floyd Mayweather. It's not many fighters go their whole career and go unbeaten. So these kids will like fight journeyman till like 20-0, and then as soon as they get stepped up any sort of level, they get beat. You're better off fighting someone. I don't know, when you're 10, 11-0, get stepped up, lose a close fight, but a 50-50 fight, and know what boxing really about. Because when you're fighting these journeymen, you literally have is a couple of good journeymen, but it's no disrespect for them. Without journeyman, boxing wouldn't exist. That is a fact. So, but no disrespect to them, but half of these kids, as soon as they get stepped up, they get beat. Because they don't really know what a 50-50 fight is, like, because they have everything their own way all the time. So,
yeah, I think didn't we discuss, Dan, a couple of weeks back about the kind of padding of records when you like in boxing or MMA, like if you're younger, like you almost people building those undefeated streaks to try and pad their record out almost.
Yeah, it used to happen a lot in MMA. It went through a period where it was getting like that, but I think that happens less and less now, particularly of the highest order. I mean, one of the criticisms that we spoke about in boxing at the highest level is the fact that you get two top guys at any given weight that talk about fighting each other, but it never happens until they're past their peak. Utterly frustrating, really frustrating. I think it does nothing but harm boxing. But in MMA, that largely don't happen. I think in MMA, I think it's so much harder to go unbeaten. You do see it. We had it with Habib, but I think it's such an oddity to be able to go through being unbeaten. I think people get scarred records along the way, and I don't think it's shunned upon too much in MMA.
All fighters lose, but
and my understanding of boxing is that a lot of the time in boxing, you'll see a professional fight quite often in their early part of their career, and they are fighting people that they can sort of like run through and fight on a more frequent basis. I would suggest, from the knowledge that I've got of boxing, that there is a natural process to a point to pad the early part of your record out, but then of course you've got to start stepping up and going through adversity at some point. Otherwise you're going pure easy, and then when it gets hard you're losing every time. So I suppose it's being managed well, and also being realistic with your career. I think making the right increments to the level of what and who you're up against is going to be huge in your final sort of level that you're going to plateau at. You obviously want to get to be the very best that you can be, and hope that that's best to be the very best. But in doing so, you've got to have the right type of fights at the right sort of time.
100%, mate. 100%. Gav, you're right to stay with us, mate. Yeah. That's right.
I'm picking my boy up from Taekwondo. That's all. I got like, he's got like 20 minutes anyway. But
that's cool. I didn't want to keep you or like have you rushing about. That was all.
No, that's fine. Picking him up.
Donna Perry wants to know, Gav, who was your hero growing up?
Like boxing wise or just in
anything,
general?
Mate. Anything.
Probably my father. Like, if you look up fathers, but like boxing wise, Johnny Tapia, I really like watching him. I know he's an old fighter, but like what a fighter! I used to he was the type of guy, you're saying there, like UFC fighters, they'll take any fight, whereas boxing now these days, it's all business, like Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. That's all.
I can ask you about that now. Jesus.
That's all to do with money. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a real fighter, you'll fight anyone. Whereas for these boxers now, you'll get like two world-class fighters. They won't fight each other because they obviously one don't want a loss, and the other one, like, they're arguing over, like, I don't know, but it's millions as well what they're arguing over. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just that's what boxing as well. Like, and that's why UFC got the platform is on and got so much backing, because they'll fight anyone. UFC's fighters, you just gotta probably ask someone. They're like, yeah, they don't even ask about the money, sort of thing.
No.
Yeah, Gavin.
Funny, though. Go on.
Sorry, I just got to. Do you think that some of the issues is because of the money? And do you think maybe if MMA fighters got paid the kind of purses that, you know, the top world-class boxers got paid, do you think that it could then roll on and get the same problem in MMA where people avoid each other? Because I don't know. I just find it bizarre. I've always had the mentality I wanted to find out how good I was or wasn't.
Yeah.
I really wanted to know where I sat on the world stage. So I was willing to fight anyone. Back then, there was not a lot of money involved. Do you think that that's become the issue, or do you think it's more of a case that there's so many versions of world titles and they can just sit comfortably in their own sort of like
Yeah, I get where you're coming from with, like, the versions of titles, because, like, it's a piss take now. Like, one belt, is it the WBO? I think it's got like three world champions, and the WBC got 2 world champions. Once you're world champion, you're world champion. Like, it should be. I know it's like, was it like 4 governing bodies or 5 governing bodies that got a world title in boxing now, but that should only be 1 champion in each of them things. You shouldn't be having 2 things like that. I'm not so thing about that, because there's so many fighters. It does bring fighters together to have them super fight sort of thing. Who's like 2 world champions, so fighting each other, so it sells, doesn't it? But like, I think it's 100% down to money, because boxing's a business. It's not a sport anymore.
Because you know, on the MMA side of things, looking at the boxing, if I was still fighting, and I just couldn't see how you could say, "Oh, I'm not happy because you're getting 20 million and I'm only getting 10." I mean, I'll be jumping all over anything near 1 million. But I just don't understand. I mean, they're obviously extremely, extremely wealthy, and rightly so. Doing combat sports is not easy. It can largely be detrimental to your health at some point if you're not going to get out at the right time. You know, it comes with a lot of risk factors, so you should get paid extremely well. But I think there's less argument the more money there is, although there seems to be more argument about trying to get fights on when there's so much more money involved. But surely, once you're a multi-millionaire, you're a multi-millionaire no matter how many millions you have in there. I just can't see how that's it's almost like an excuse. And it's almost like, well, I'm not happy because you're getting 5 million more. Perhaps they feel they're less value to the opponent.
Like, I don't know. And they're arguing over, like, I don't know, they're arguing, you said like 10, 20 million. Like, if you go down through the rankings, if you offered someone 500,000 for a fight, they'd fight Anthony Joshua for that, even if they were a fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then once they get to a certain level, like, oh no, I'm not fighting for that sort of money. It's like, what?
Well, like, to me, and maybe I would think differently if I was in the situation. I've been a big proponent of fighters in MMA and boxing at any level, but particularly professional. Those fighters deserve to be getting so much more money than what they're getting. And I'm not talking about the Joshuas and the Furies of the world. I'm talking about the people who make the sport putting on the shows week in, week out. Not the guys who fight once a year and take 20 million. I'm talking the guys who fight week in, week out and put these shows on for us, put their health at risk, long term and short term. They don't get paid enough, and I've been banging that drum for a long time. But to me, if I've got so much money in the bank that I never have to work again, my missus never has to work again, her parents never have to work again, and my parents and our kids that will never have to work, then the difference between 5 million and 10 million is like, well, maybe the difference is between 10 and 15 quid to me and you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just ridiculous, and it does feel like an excuse. And Gav, I did want to ask you about the Fury and the Joshua. I call it a debacle, mate, because I think it's absolute farce.
But do you know? I think it's down, I honestly believe it's down to Tyson Fury now. Like Eddie had everything over across the line, and you can see he's really pissed off as well. I've seen.
Yeah, he was hurt, wasn't he?
He done an interview. Kugan Cassius on IFL TV done an interview the other day, yesterday I think it was, because all this COVID now has come out. It's going to be postponed, and he's saying like it's no COVID in the camp. They're doing that on purpose and things like that. So so it could be down to money or something else. You don't know, do you? But, I saw
an interview with Eddie when they first announced that he had the Fury had to fight, his mandatory challenger in Wilder, and you could see like he was genuinely like hurt, not even pissed off. He was hurt because he had put so much personal time, effort, money, work into getting all the sides together, sorting out Saudi Arabia, getting the fight sorted. Like he had put a lot of his life into that for the year previous or whatever. He felt like it was there. He'd finally got it done. And then he felt like he had been misled or, whatever it is. Yeah, but it's frustrating, isn't it? Because the older they get, the fighters, particularly Fury, the older they get, the less likely it's going to happen. And if it does happen, you don't want it to be like what Mayweather and Pacquiao was, where they weren't, they were a shadow of themselves, isn't they?
Yeah, like, and I honestly can't see it still going ahead, even after, if he does fight Wilder. I just can't see it going ahead. And it's robbing, really, the public of like a massive super fight. Like, we haven't had something like that in so many years.
All British super fight is like something which,
I know it was going to be in Saudi Arabia, but I know a lot of fans will be going out there.
Yes, they would have, I mean, we've had a question from someone in the chat, and I think it's probably it's the question we have all been waiting for. I've got it written down 3 times so I don't forget to ask it, but I'll put it up on screen. Rob Boyle Gav wants to know, does anyone else think you look like John Cena? There we go. John Cena from the WWE. There we go. And there's a couple of people said,
that's a compliment, that is. My missus when I get in now.
There you go. You can walk in. The champ is here.
I don't think I look like him.
I can see it a little bit. Same hairstyle. Similar hairstyle, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Both jacked, mate. Yes. That's what there you go. It is what it is, isn't it?
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, people tell me I look like people like that all the time. I don't know what you're on about. Brad Pitt, just all of them. I get it. I get Tom Hardy all the time. Yeah, just it comes with the territory, unfortunately. Right. So I've been asking fighters a lot recently because it's been in the news so much, but I do like to get a different, because everyone's got a different opinion on it. Some people don't care, some people like it, some people want to smash them. What do we think about Logan and Jake Paul and boxing, mate, as a professional boxer yourself? Do you find it frustrating?
It is, and do you know what? Like, you can't disrespect them for earning the money they are. That's what they do.
They know how to promote themselves, don't they?
They're not doing it to become world champions or anything like that. They're doing it purely for the money.
Yeah,
they're not doing it for the love of the sport or anything else. That they're just doing it purely for the money. So you can't blame them for doing that. But when you hear them calling out people, and I don't know who it was. I don't know which one it was. I don't know both of them. I just don't like them.
Jake is the mouthy one, isn't he?
Yeah,
I
Jake,
think,
and
yeah.
after it must have been Logan fought Floyd Mayweather, and he was like, "You just beat him, you just beat him." I'm thinking he just held him up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was thinking, oh my god, these kids. That's what they act like, 12-year-olds.
Yeah, making millions.
I'd love to spar with them and just I'd get smoke out of them, but I wouldn't get off them. I say we ain't have no break. We do 30-minute spar, and it's smoke out of them.
Yeah, but you know what? They know what they're doing. They a lot of people are watching because they want to watch them get defeated.
Well, it's funny you said they act like
They know what they're
12-year-olds,
doing.
but that's what their audience is. It's
Yeah.
like on YouTube, they've built it up, and they have like say 11 to 15, 16-year-olds, and like the thing is, like years ago, they wouldn't have been able to do what they're doing, but because of YouTube and social media, they're not only able to go and do it, but they can go to people, to promoters in boxing and say, if you put us in a main event against someone who's fairly well known, our fans will buy the pay-per-view. And until that stops, or they get 7 bells of shit knocked out of them, I kind of think it's going to keep going, because it's just the way that if someone is selling pay-per-views, they're always going to be featured heavily on boxing or MMA cards. It's just it's a business.
They are bringing the numbers in, and obviously the money then, and and they are bringing in huge numbers. So, like, you can't blame them for doing it. If that was me, I'd be doing that straight away.
Yeah, Gav, how does it work in boxing? Like, do you get like? I obviously don't expect you to tell us figures, but like in terms of, do you get paid like a purse for the fight, and then a boat like more if you win? And then do you get like a cut of if it's on pay-per-view and stuff like that, or TV money? How does it work with it?
It's all to do with purses. Like, so you agree the purse before you actually fight. You don't get no win bonus. Obviously, if you win a title, the next fight is going to be double, treble what you earned on the fight beforehand. But I've only boxed on the one pay-per-view event, and we were right down in the card, so I didn't get no extra money. No.
No, I just wasn't sure how it worked, because obviously last year the UFC changed with their sort of the way they do everything, because they went with it exclusively with ESPN, which took away a lot of the fighters' leverage. Like someone like Conor McGregor was always able to leverage a lot of money out of them because he sold so many pay-per-views. But the UFC had their money up front from ESPN for
they got to like share it out between everyone, sort of thing. And that's how, and I think that's how it should be, really. Everyone should have their fair cut.
So unfortunately, I think the UFC kept it all for themselves. But
probably did. It's a business.
Yeah,
the business now is exactly like boxing. But I think UFC are doing well with their fighters, because obviously, like we're going back on what we said earlier on. Now there's more 50-50 fights, so a lot more people want to watch UFC, and they do want to watch boxing, because you're watching 80-20 fights in boxing. Like a Frank Warren show yesterday, nearly all them fights were like, well, they were 50-50 fights, and it's boring. You're better off going to the gym and watch sparring.
Yeah, interesting now, isn't it? Because like, so you're saying like the boxing, which was on last night, wasn't great predominantly, whereas the UFC 264 card, you had the early prelims had ranked fighters fighting. The prelims had some big names in it, and then the main card was stacked, and pretty much every fight, I can't think off the top of my head, one fight which was kind of disappointing. Maybe you could say the main event was a disappointment because it finished with a leg break rather than a finish.
That was only down to the ankle break, wasn't it? Like,
you can't do anything about that, can you?
No, you can't do nothing about that. Like, you see it in a lot of the boxing events as well. Like, a lot of the shows, like it's only like the main like 4 or the top of the card, the 50-50 fights. All the rest of them. Like, and that's a massive effect on like boxing fans and things like that. And they know the boxing fans know they ain't stupid. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that got to change really. Yeah, in boxing, and I think it would benefit from it as well.
Be nice when
So-
if they switch it up a bit.
Yeah, when we're talking about like the fight purses and stuff, I mean, I think I was right in reading it the way I read it, but you got someone like Conor McGregor that got 20 million for that fight against Poirier, and Poirier made $1 million or something, you know, huge, and yet Poirier was the higher ranked,
Yeah,
you know, expected to win fighter, and so, you know, in MMA you can largely get paid not necessarily on your performances, but on the character and the attention you bring to the sport.
I sorry to stop you, but there, Danny, I'm gonna have to shoot my boys just coming out.
No, it's no worries, mate.
No worries.
Gavin Gwynne, thank you for joining us, mate.
Thank you very much for having me on, boys. Nice speaking.
No
to you.
problem. You're welcome back
Good luck,
anytime,
Gavin.
my friend. Take it easy,
Nice one.
buddy.
Thank you
Cheers.
very much. Nice one, boys.
Cheers, Gav. Gavin Gwynne. He's such a cool guy. I love Gav. He's a nice bloke, champ. We'll get him back on as well because obviously he did us a favor because initially we had tonight scheduled for 8:00, but of course me being me, I completely forgot about the football. And then when we did the football show on Friday, everyone was like, "Oh, so is the fight show on later or earlier or cancelled?" And I was like, "Oh crap, better." So I'm like talking to Andy on Friday in the football show, and I'm texting you going, "Dan, can you start earlier?" And then so Gav, he had to take his little boy to Taekwondo, but he still gave us a good 50 minutes, which you cannot fault from the champ. But we'll get him back on because I know
Absolutely
he's got some big things planned. But it's never fear, ladies and gentlemen, and 75 people in the chats. There is still plenty to talk about, and we are going to talk UFC 264 in just a second. But before we do, mate, Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, friend of the show, recent guest of the show, recent signee from the UFC to the UFC from Cage Warriors, the Scouse Man. His debut has been announced. Very interesting. It's September the 4th against Luigi Valderrama, who's 1-2 in the UFC at the moment. But most interestingly, on the same card is a middleweight fight between Darren Till and someone who I can't remember off the top of my head. Derek Brunson, who's ranked number 5. And I think if Darren Till wins that, he'll probably get a title shot. But the reason I say it's interesting is because UFC wants to put a London card on, and I believe, because they haven't announced the venue for it, I believe that now everything's opened up in England, that UFC card on the 4th of September featuring Paddy and Darren Till, I think it's going to be in London.
Possibly so.
So can you imagine the crowd for that? They'd be up for it anyway, but Paddy's debut in the UFC as well could be, the atmosphere will be sensational.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thoroughly excited to see Paddy fight in the UFC. But also I saw on Jack Shaw's Facebook, he said, just in passing, he said he signed a fight contract, didn't say who against it or whatever. But I wonder whether, again, he might be, they will stack it with UK fighters. So the likelihood would be, we'd see the likes of Jack, maybe Modestus, or, all these different fighters who from the UK will be on that card, mate.
It makes sense if they did do that.
Excited to see Paddy get in there?
Yeah, sure, I am. And what I like is that they've given him a sensible first time fight as well, and not to say that any fight's a guarantee win, not in the terms of fighting in UFC with just with MMA in general, you just can't guarantee anything. But it goes to show that they're taking the lad really seriously and they're looking to build him up. So I'm kind of happy about that. When you look at the kind of introduction that Mason's had, it's hugely different introduction that he's had.
Yeah, they gave him such a tough fight.
Kind of strange.
I got to say, really, in that one, the last fight, which was stopped from an eye poke, Mason was, he was doing a great job.
Doing an absolute great job.
And again, if Mason was to fight, and I know he wants to get in there again soon, if he was on that UFC card if it's in London card, or whenever they do a London card, if Mason Jones is on it, the Welsh fans if him and Jack Shaw were on the same UFC card in London, mate, there would be a Welsh invasion. I can tell you that much now.
I have no doubt about that. I have no doubt about that.
Superb stuff, mate. Really, really would be great. I might even think about trying to get some tickets, try and maybe help some people. But right, I don't know. It's like I do not know where to start from last night's UFC, my friend. It was just incredible. I think I'm going to start probably where people don't expect me to, because I like to mix it up a bit. I'm going to start with I was not impressed with Gilbert Burns smashing Stephen Thompson over the head with several illegal shots, and the referee seemingly not giving he did not care. That was a worry to me, because they are big men and they were illegal shots. It wasn't just one wayward one. I think it was 6 or 7 to the back of the head. That's not good, is it, mate?
It's not great. It was all done in such a quick flurry. Maybe it was just, I don't know, easier to get overlooked. So obviously, us with the perfect angle can see it. I don't know, but I just think, Gilbert Burns.
Ref should see that, shouldn't he?
He should do, but regardless of that, Gilbert Burns won that fight.
Oh God, yeah.
He did really, really well, and the thing that got him the win was the fact that he could get Thompson down, which is something that we don't see. Thompson had a little weakness in his game with that single. That was what was causing him all the problems. I think that Thompson, what he should have been doing, particularly in that first round, he's got to have known that there was going to be a takedown attempt in that first round.
Yeah.
It made absolute game plan sense from Burns' side of things. So because you're going to expect that, and coming in up on that single is such an expectancy for an entry, particularly with the head on the inside single, so he can run back onto a double and get working up against the fence. Thompson should have been throwing elbows. He had the posture of his head broken down on the inside, but Thompson played a waiting game. And the thing is, you're not putting Gilbert Burns under any kind of stress or duress while, tugging on that single, looking for the double. And he was just allowed to hold and coast his wrestling. I think the way that Thompson should have won this was once you got the clinch up, is to get going in with those elbows and get Burns' heart rate up, because I do think the weakness in Burns' game is that he's very, very explosive, and I suspect his cardio all the time, certainly going into later rounds. But because Gilbert Burns was able to get it to the ground, he was able to coast and look after that cardio with that explosive style. So when he did explode, he got the effective once from the game, which was to get Thompson down. Thompson did really, really well to get up on in that first round, but really just didn't look like he was going to get up at all in that third round, which was, ending him to the loss. I think he won the second round. I saw good things from both, but Burns, I'm really surprised. I had Thompson down to win. It was all down to whether he got put down, and Burns got him down. It was really, really good. Thompson just couldn't get going enough on the striking, unfortunately. But yeah, there was a few changes I would have been trying to push Thompson to be doing in there to try to put him back into contention to win that fight. I think if he played his cards right and strategized right, he could have beat Burns. I think it was in his favor to win all along. But Burns, he performed brilliantly. He did what he needed to do, and he got that win. He's right up there, still in the mix. Stephen Thompson's got to decide what he wants to do with his career now. I mean, he's not a young man anymore, but he's still performing really, really well. I mean, this was not a fight that he got destroyed in by any sense of the word, and making some changes, such as some of the ideas that I'm putting forward, could tip it into his favor to beat people like Gilbert Burns. But, where does Thompson go from here? He's going to have to reprove himself over 2 fights, and then perhaps a third fight to establish number 1 contendership to go for a title. Is he going to start getting too long in the tooth years-wise? Still looks fantastic, though, so maybe he can pull it off. He seems to live a clean life.
Yes, yeah. It'll be interesting what he does. I think we did speculate last week that if Burns was able to take him down, that was where it could be won and lost. And Thompson needed to try and keep the distance and use his feet, which are obviously renowned for his kickboxing. Is superb. Right, look, there's so many different talking points, but I think we're just going to have to jump in match by match. So, was there anything on the prelims that you wanted to touch on?
I did watch Carlos Condit and Max Griffin.
Okay.
I watched that one because Max Griffin, I think, is someone that's got potential to really bust through on the main scene. So I was really curious to see how he'd deal with someone like Condit. First round by Max Griffin was amazing. Really worked the leg kicks on Condit. Condit has a really unusual style. For my money, stands up way too tall. He's almost got a borderline Thai boxing stance. So although he was getting leg kicked, his leg was flipping up in the air. It didn't look like it was actually doing damage than someone who stands quite square 50-50. So it was quite interesting to see how Condit just wasn't seemingly perturbed too much with those leg kicks. Carlos Condit, being the experienced fighter that he is, really switched it up in that second round. And I think he pinched that second round off of Griffin. It looked like Griffin maybe had worked himself really hard and sharp in that first round and burnt himself out a little bit. And I thought, well, maybe the tide's turning here and we're going to have a really interesting third round. But Max Griffin, he stepped it up again and managed to get Carlos Condit down on the ground and visually just steal that third round from under his feet. So Max Griffin, looking really, really good. But likewise, Carlos Condit, thinking of all the years that he's been fighting at this level, he still showed he had a lot of relevancy in there. I think no longer ever going to become a contender for the title in that division. So he's largely becoming a bit of a gatekeeper. But I like watching him. I do like watching him. I don't think he's completely out the running if he wants to carry on earning money and he enjoys the sport. I've got no problems watching Carlos Condit fight. And if I see him on the prelims card, I'll always check in to watch his performances. But like I say, I think he is on the slow demise. He hasn't reached that point yet where he's completely out the running, but I like watching him fight.
Yeah, of course. It's one of those, isn't it? It's he's just an enjoyable fighter to watch. Ultimately, Megs, I guess if he keeps winning or if he wins fights, he'll stick around. He needs to win the odd one, doesn't he? For them to keep
absolutely
him
does.
He don't think they'll keep him around if he just kind of was to keep losing, unfortunately. Yeah. It's just one of those. It's going to be interesting. So then next up, or the first fight on the main card, should I say, we had Sean O'Malley versus Chris Moutinho. Mate, this was an absolute banger. As I've talked about over the last couple of weeks, Sean O'Malley, I love watching him fight. I find him so entertaining, but not just entertaining because he's quite flashy. The boy has got skills, hasn't he? He's real good, and he smashed that guy's face up. Yeah.
You can't say he ran through the guy because the guy just stayed in there. It was utterly impressive what the guy endured, and taking it under the circumstances as well. Obviously, late notice fight. He looked so much smaller than O'Malley. I know O'Malley's quite tall in division, but the guy really did look small. But he had incredible tenacity. Really, really did. And listen, if a lesser Sean O'Malley stepped in and maybe didn't take this guy serious, we could have seen a massive upset here with that kind of tenacity and that kind of durability. The guy just did not stop walking forward. Now, if only this kid had used that tight defense that he had, because it was kind of tight, but no matter how tight you hold your hands, if you haven't got head movement there, people are going to pick past them, especially with these small MMA gloves. And that was what O'Malley was doing. O'Malley is a complete sniper, a complete sharpshooter. If there's a gap, he's going to find it. So if there's going to be any gaps in that tight guard that he was having, you want to put a bit of lucidity with head movement in there. But such as the way that O'Malley moves, he kind of had to come in quite square with his feet, and he had to chase him around a little bit, and it did lead to his head being static and being pinged up. But who could ever think that a fight would become an entertaining fight because of how much someone could endure and be getting hit? But because of that style, you saw O'Malley taking deep breaths at times, and you just know towards the latter part of these rounds, could that Moutinho reverse things all of a sudden? And like I say, a lesser Sean O'Malley who maybe didn't have the right type of camp and his fitness was a little off. We could have seen Moutinho maybe come on the onslaught late in any of those rounds and pull off a win. And I think that's why it was such an entertaining fight in the end, although on the scorecard, it must have been, hugely in Sean O'Malley's favour. You just never know. Was Sean O'Malley going to run out of tank? It was great. I mean, I want to see this kid, Moutinho, perform with a proper fight camp, proper weight division, whichever that way may be, because I don't know much about the kid. But I think this made people sit up and watch and take note. I just hope the UFC give him a fair chance, especially as he stepped in against such a formidable opponent on 11 days' notice. I hope UFC give him a real chance second time around for his next bout.
Yeah, we just talked about how they're building Paddy Pimblett up, so they should do the same for this Moutinho, because he deserves that, because to take the damage that he took was just unbelievable, and he showed some skills. So it really is a case of when he's not on 11 days notice, let's see what he can do. But Sean O'Malley, he's responded very well to that loss that he suffered. Very skilled fighter, isn't he? The way he was just hitting those jabs and then sliding out was real sensational, honestly, mate. I was so impressed.
Yeah, it was. But we have to reel ourselves back in. This kid was coming on very, very square to him, giving him a lot of opportunities to showcase his standing skills, which we know he's good at. We know he's a sharpshooter. We know he's rangy. We know he's flamboyant and creative. And one thing we do also know is that he's certainly fit, because to chuck that amount of strikes out to someone because they keep coming, you have to be fit to do so. But let's not get ahead of ourselves too much. Moutinho didn't really shoot in too much. No. He didn't test the other areas of the game. And just for reference, I thought Moutinho, when he was kicking the leg a lot more of Sean O'Malley in that first round, I think if he had kept those kicks to the leg going throughout the second and third round, he might have immobilized O'Malley enough to have more of those opportunities and chances that sort of presented themselves in the last 30 seconds. I think maybe it would have taken something out of his legs and maybe start cornering him up, so to speak, in a circulated shaped cage, sort of like getting fixated against the fence, maybe with a minute and a half to go. I think he would have created more opportunities to try and put it on Sean O'Malley, but he kind of come off those leg kicks. I think it could have changed things up to make it a closer affair, but we can't take anything away from the kid. I utterly respect what he did on that day. He made a performance of it. He really did.
Professional performance, I think, as well, wasn't it? Yeah. Do you know, like you said, if he hadn't taken Moutinho seriously, he could have been in a spot bar there, but he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of those. Then we had next up was Irene Aldana versus Yana Kunitskaya. I'm terrible with names. Irene Aldana is ranked 4. Yana is ranked 5. Aldana picked up the win with TKO strikes, but particularly the latter part of this fight was quite dominant, mate.
Yeah. I mean, Yana was doing really, really well. She was coming in constantly, really aggressive, really key-eyeing on every strike to show her commitment to everything. She was playing it rangy. She was playing it close. She was doing really, really well. But Aldana, one thing I've noticed about her is her form has become very, very good. She plants her feet very well balanced. She has really good form with her arms. She'll move her head at the correct times. And she's looking composed, looking like an experienced practitioner of MMA. It's really impressing me each time she steps in there. But Yana had great spells too. But Aldana, she would stay tight. She stayed focused. And she waited for an opportunity to present itself. And when it did, she was absolutely on it. She was just like a shark in water that got the taste of blood. It would go straight in for the kill. And she did that. I mean, you can't really say much more about that performance. There were some great striking exchanges. Yana was looking very, very good. Aldana just stayed tight, stayed focused, and countered well. But as soon as the opportunity come about, she was absolutely on it. I did hear in the commentator saying that she should stand her back up. I think with that kind of aggressive ground and pound that she was putting in, I don't think it was wrong for her to go to the ground in the way that she did. I think it was really good what she done. I think it was a good strategical choice.
she was kind of wary of the up kicks, and you could see she was waiting just to pounce on her and get the ground and pound and just finish the fight, basically. But yeah, it was enjoyable. What was even more enjoyable, at least for me, and I think probably several other men and women around the world, was Tuivasa, as predicted, by the way, by Oban Elliott on last week's show.
And me.
Yeah, but he said he's going to knock him out, and then he's going to sit on the cage and drink beer out of a shoe. And he did it.
Right.
That's how you do a prediction, Danny. But
that is.
Tai Tuivasa faced Greg Hardy. Obviously, as we've discussed, Greg Hardy, ex-footballer, I think, American footballer, is not very popular. He's had problems with the law I think he beat up his wife or something along those lines, allegedly, just so I don't get sued. But I'm pretty sure it's not allegedly, from what I can gather. Tai Tuivasa knocked him out and then drank beer out of a shoe.
Yes, he did. They both traded off, though, didn't they? And in this weight division, it could have gone wrong for Tai.
Yeah, but he didn't care, does he? He just goes in.
Yeah, Tai Tuivasa's striking, I really do rate it. He's not the biggest in the division in terms of his stature of height, but he's short, stocky. He's got great sense of his range, and I really liked it that he come out hacking the leg of Hardy, because Hardy's got a lot of height advantage, and he hacked up on that leg so that Hardy didn't feel he could sit down on his punches and
I thought it distracted him a little bit as well, mate.
It did distract him. It did, and it made Hardy come in a little badly balanced and come in a little blind with his flurries, because he didn't know whether another one of those leg kicks were coming in. So when he got in, he kind of just spewed out a load of strikes, and Tai Tuivasa, look, in the pocket, it's going to go in his favour. He's just designed well. His striking style, as well as his physicality, is designed better to trade in the pocket than someone like Hardy. Hardy's arms went a little wayward. He got clipped on the front of the face. A bit of an unusual knockout.
Got him right on the eye.
It was sort of like to the top front portion of the face. But look, these guys, they hit hard, and particularly with Tai Tuivasa, he's a big hitting dude, and right near the beginning of the first round. So, there's going to be no fatigue in any of those shots. Every shot, when it's thrown with intent, it's going to be a hard hit.
Yeah, one of the things which impressed me with the shots that finished the fight is it wasn't just wild swings. He waited as Greg Hardy came in, he kind of rocked back slightly to the right and just nailed him to the left, nailed him once with the left hand, and then he swung another one straight after, and because he had knocked him out, he missed that second shot. But it was obviously there's that famous sentence, isn't there, by Conor McGregor after the Aldo fight: timing beats precision and precision beats speed. It was the precision of his shots, but obviously with a heavyweight as well, if you've got precision, you're gonna do some serious damage. And Greg Hardy was knocked out, and that was that. Thoroughly enjoyable, I have to say. I really did. Love performance. It was if you take the other side out of it, the things which we dislike about Greg Hardy, he hasn't had very many boring fights, win or lose, because he goes in there to fight. Then we had Gilbert Burns and Stephen Thompson. Obviously, you've talked about that one in detail. Was there anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, just one more thing to add. Gilbert Burns, as we know, top tier world class grappler, and they did say in the commentary how he'd fought just recently with a top ranked grappler, and he won the match. So he's still really active on the BJJ scene. So his grappling is really top tier. But to really demonstrate how that, although you could be of the highest order in terms of jiu-jitsu grappling, how that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to run through someone on the ground in terms of MMA, because in MMA someone's always trying to stand back up. They're not grappling one-on-one. One's grappling, one's trying not to grapple. And so things have to change with your grappling, regardless of what you think of your level as a grappler. When someone's got the fence and they're trying to scramble up, it's no longer a jiu-jitsu match, because in jiu-jitsu there ain't no fence, there ain't no wall you can clamber up, and you're going to fight jiu-jitsu on jiu-jitsu. This isn't the case, and Gilbert Burns did make a mistake in that first round, which allowed Stephen Thompson to get up, and that was his head positioning. Once his back got against the fence, Gilbert Burns kept his head position in the side and lower part of his jaw, which almost amplified the effectiveness of Stephen Thompson coming back to the feet, and he lost him. What he should have been doing there, if someone's going to have their back up against the fence, you want to change your head position and get your head more on top of them. So to add to the weight, to make it hard for him to come to the feet. And he could have had more time on the mat, so to speak, with Thompson in that first round and taken more out of his game. But he kind of let Thompson off the hook a little bit there by getting him back to the feet. And you don't want to be on the feet for any length of time with someone like Stephen Thompson, because he will find range. He will start accumulating those effective shots that we see him do time and time again. But still, I can't take anything away from Gilbert Burns. I mean, that is a small technicality that I feel that I noticed. Other people might disagree or have other thoughts on it. But that's how I saw it. He let him off the hook there coming up, but he put those wrongs right in that third round. He got him down. He kept him down. And it was a great performance. Well done, Gilbert Burns.
Yeah, he did what he had to do, mate. At the end of the day, I think that's probably the best way to put it. So, Reece, I'm going to come to your question in just a second because it's a good question, and I have an answer, and I'm sure Danny will have an answer, and it'd be interesting if we got the same answer. But just before we do that, the main event was Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. Obviously, this one was a lot more heated and personal than the second fight because you could see what Conor McGregor was trying to do. He was trying to do what he had done in the first fight, which was get under Dustin Poirier's skin, which I think shows gives a tremendous amount of respect to Dustin Poirier in a strange way, because Conor McGregor was worried enough about him that he went back to his old mind games and things like this that had got him so much success earlier in his career. And I think that shows that he knew he had to be at his best to have any chance against Dustin Poirier. The gold color has said in the live chat he thinks Conor McGregor's finished. It's difficult to say off that performance because I think the first minute and a half, 2 minutes, I thought Conor looked pretty good. Then I think you noticed I watched it back about an hour before we did this, and when one of Conor's low kicks gets checked by Poirier, and you can hear like a noise, and I think he fractured his foot there. And then when later on in the fight, after Dustin's had quite a bit of success on the ground, Conor McGregor obviously stepped back, broke his ankle. But I think it had fractured first, and then he did the rest of the round, and then it broke. Everyone's got an opinion on Conor McGregor. Everyone, they like him, you don't like him. He's very good at what he does. It was nasty, though, the ankle breaking. One thing I just want to say, Dan, before we get your take on it, is they gave the judges scorecard for that one round, and the judges, two judges scored it a 10-8 to Dustin Poirier. That, to me, is an absolute disgrace. I think I probably would have just given it to Poirier, but no way is it a 10-8 round. No way is that a 10-8 round, because one, Conor had a good portion of the striking at the start of the fight in the first minute and a half to 2 minutes. Two, even when Conor was on the floor, he was hitting strikes and some really good elbows from underneath. It was just never a 10-8, never. But so Alex Alberto there says there was no checks with the kicks. He said Conor was still planting his feet. I got to say, I thought Conor's low kicks at the start of the fight really looked like they were, I think it was the Diaz fight, the second Diaz fight. He did something similar. They looked really dangerous, and they looked like they were troubling Dustin Poirier. And I was so excited for this fight. I was so excited, even like as the round progressed, as Conor was hitting some nice strikes, but then Poirier, got him down, and he had some really good ground and pound, and you're thinking, here we go, this is it, and then a broken leg or whatever. It's just, not the way we wanted it to finish. And they're still going back and forth verbally as they're announcing the decision. Dana White has already said they're gonna, whoever wins between Poirier and, I forgot his name, Oliveira for the title, Conor will get the winner of that, basically.
Right.
which is weird to me. Like, to me, he should get Poirier again if he wants it. I don't necessarily think he should get a title shot, but there might just be. You don't know how long he's going to be out with, mate. A broken leg like that at his age, it's. I saw a lot of people saying that maybe he's finished, not from a skills point of view, but from a just his age, serious injury like that. It's difficult, isn't it? Just quickly, it was a doctor stoppage, and there seemed to be some sort of confusion about that. It was clearly a doctor stoppage, but for some reason, there was some people trying to make out that it was a TKO. It's not a TKO; it's a doctor stoppage. And very lastly, the gold color, it says the ankle is your pivot point of power from hips to striker and release point. So the ankle is a hard turning point on turning. Trust me, the power is now gone from Conor's game. What do you think of that? Do you think he's still got the power in those kicks to do the damage that he did before?
Yeah, I think he's on about the power in his hands. Will it affect the power in his hands?
Right, I see. Okay,
because he does really stretch his cross hand. It's almost like he throws it overcommittedly, almost. If you're going to turn it in real technical terms,
leaves himself open, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, he just puts a lot of pressure on that lead foot. He really puts a lot of weight on it. Look, Conor McGregor's obviously got a lot of fast twitch muscle type, and he's well muscled as well. When he throws, if you don't plant your foot right and you're punching over that lead foot and your foot's slightly turned in, that's going to be a lot of twisted motion on that ankle. I think that's probably what's happened. I don't think he fractured it with the leg kicks.
Okay.
Trust me, if he had got a fracture in his ankle with any of those leg kicks before a break, he would have been limited. No, he would have been in a lot of pain. You would have seen him wince as he stepped back straight after a kick. You would have seen something. You're not going to get a fracture.
Just like the noise sounded like when I fractured my foot, to be honest.
yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But listen, when you're kicking with the shin against leg, it's gonna make a lot of noise. So I don't personally think it was that. I just think it was literally the mechanics of the punch. His foot position was not quite right, and he put too much weight over that foot, and it broke it that way. Whether it's the end of his career or not, no one knows. We just have to let that play out. I hope not, and I hope he comes back to full effectiveness, because I've always been a fan of McGregor. I think he's brought a lot of positive things to the sport, other than that incident where he threw that trolley at the coach. I think that was a step too far. He's made his errors in life, and I don't agree with those errors. No, exactly. But on his performance, he come out doing exactly what I felt he should be doing if he wants to stand a chance to win, which is to use his legs at different heights. He did introduce a low leg kick, which I think was great, was working really, really well. I loved it that he was hitting that rear teep, which is something else I said that he would have to introduce. He has to make it so it weren't just a boxing affair. Although he's got the power advantage, I think Poirier on paper has the better boxing technicalities, particularly over 3 rounds, 4 rounds and 5 rounds. So I liked it that he was introducing the kicks. The mistake was, and what we've got to understand is, Dustin Poirier didn't take Conor McGregor down. Conor McGregor thought that he had the guillotine, which was a strategical huge error. And this is because he's not had enough time in the cage. Now, one of the rules I have for my students is that you don't jump back for a submission unless it's in the last 30 seconds, 40 seconds of the round. Then it might be something you jump to your back to, because if you jump to your back and you don't pull off that submission, you're probably going to lose that round. It was just too early on to, and Poirier's, he's pretty accomplished grappler outright anyway. He knows how to wrestle, he knows how to grapple, he knows how to, but I'm talking in terms of MMA here. He knows how to be effective on top, and we saw that. But McGregor going to his back for a submission, I mean, it just was never the right thing. If he was going to win it, he was going to win it on the feet. And so stay there. Don't bail out with a submission. He's never looked great, although I do think McGregor's a better grappler than people think he is. I just think with his fuel tank, the way it is, because of his style of striking, the style of his fighting, he needs to look after that fuel tank, a bit like Gilbert Burns. He needs to pick and choose it, but he doesn't have the same skill sets as Gilbert Burns. He's a pure sniper with a lot of power in his hands. and a lot of nice dexterous kicks, flamboyancy with his kicks. He should have been staying on his feet, but that's where it all went wrong in my mind for him. He got himself a little
he
tired.
looked dangerous before he tried to do
He
that
did,
as well,
he did. And he got to his feet. They both immediately trade before he could get his composure. Hence, I think his foot position was very, very slightly off, and he tried to throw through some of those punches, put too much weight on that ankle, and it gave way on him. Such a shame. It really was, because I really would have loved to have seen how that would have gone on into the second and third round and so forth, but it's just not meant to be. I mean, come on, this wouldn't be a Conor McGregor fight if it weren't full of something that would leave you wanting more. And to me, that's what it left me with. Look, there's not many times you could say that people fight with each other 3 times and you're left wanting to see a fourth.
Normally,
I would be really interesting seeing a fourth fight. I really would.
Put it to bed now. I don't want. I've had enough of this. Let's just leave it at that. But this is like, you almost feel like there was enough of the fight that you didn't feel sort of begrudged and like you'd missed out. But like you say, you just want more. You want to see how it turns out. Because it doesn't feel like, I know technically Dustin Poirier's 2-1 up in the trilogy, isn't he? Of course.
Yeah.
Doctor stoppage. But it doesn't feel like a definitive end to it, does it? No,
it just leaves there to still be questions. And for many people, it won't. And for the ones that won't are the people who are not fans of McGregor. They'll just be saying he's finished, he's done, and and so on and so forth. So maybe I'm being biased that I'm a fan of McGregor, but I'm also a fan of Poirier. I think he's done great things in the sport. I think he's matured into an incredible athlete and a great practitioner of MMA, and comes with such great attitude as well. He's very, very mature in what he has to say. He's very choiceful. And I think he really had to bite his tongue. I think he got offended a little bit by McGregor.
But do you see the difference in how he dealt with it this time compared to the first fight when Conor McGregor said this, that, and the other? It got to him both times, I believe.
Yes.
But this time he was able to channel his frustration, his anger into the fight, whereas as opposed in the first fight, he let his emotions get hold of him, which of course is the plan all along. Not for 1 second do I think, Conor McGregor's got any real malice for Dustin Poirier. He wouldn't have donated that money to his charity and spoke so highly of him previously. It's just a way to try and get his emotions into the fight, like he did with Aldo and Poirier before. Just to clarify, the gold color, I wasn't saying Conor McGregor should get the winner. I was just saying Dana White had said that that's an option down the road. I agree with you. He said Conor's got 2 losses. Obviously, the Cerrone fight was over and done very, very quickly. I completely agree. I think we said about a month ago, Dan, on the show, I would be quite happy to see Conor McGregor, if he comes back now, just do kind of super fights, the Diaz trilogy, and see who else is out there for those big fights. I'm not necessarily interested in seeing him fight for titles and fight those top-ranked fighters. I think ultimately it's a young man's game, and there's a lot of killers out there in those divisions that he's likely to fight in.
I think if he's going to stay in the sport,
look, he hasn't got the same power that he had 5 years ago, and he isn't the same fighter that he was 5 years ago. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not where Anderson Silva was when we were talking about him a few months ago, saying he should have stopped ages ago. Conor McGregor's nowhere near that, but maybe he's not at that elite level, title level anymore. Maybe not.
Yeah, I sort of agree and disagree. I think he has got the power. It's just that his power is no secret. So you got to remember, there's going to be not just Poirier looking, but other top coaches, other fighters that he trains with. They're all going to be analysing, how to avoid being tagged clean by Conor McGregor. Because if he gets anything near a clean shot, he's putting you in your ass and you're not going to recover from it. So, this is not that he hasn't got the power. It's just that he's fighting at the top tier level, where people obviously going to try to not allow the effective part of your game be as effective. And, it's this nature of the sport at the top. I think he's still. a lot of people were going in there and fighting Conor McGregor, not knowing about this range. But the more fights he has, the more people can data collect on his game and start studying his footwork and the angles and the distancing, his setups. So all these setups that made his punches land in the past no longer are secrets, and you can train from them, you can prepare from them. So that's kind of what's happened. I think Conor McGregor would have still been possibly a champion today if he didn't change things and start training boxing and doing these other interests. It just goes to show you how high level each division is in the UFC now. You just cannot come off the learning curve. You can't allow any kind of rust to come in your game. And to me, this is all I see from McGregor, is that he's just not quite his former self. He hasn't got enough cage time, because when he did get the win, it was done in the first couple of minutes. And this is just not enough experience for him to be performing as we saw him in the past. Now, he's got two choices if he chooses to make a comeback. He's got two career paths as far as I'm concerned, because of the character he is, because of the style he is. Yes, he could come back and do super fight matches against other people that are no longer in contention to be title holders. If for whatever reason, which is kind of the way that I feel that his career's got his best route to go, if he wants to carry on making money and be relevant in terms of attention and just enjoying the love of the sport and competing, yes, that would probably be the best way to go. But if he did want to have a run at the title, I'd love to see him create momentum again, fight the lower level guys that he is going to get his shots off and get those knockouts again on his record, and create that invincibility to his personality again, and make other people believe in him again.
He's got to be active though to do that, mate.
But you have
really active.
So if he had a couple of feeder fights, or more so feeder fights, because everyone's good that's in the UFC, but maybe some people, maybe between rank 20 and 15, and he could say get 2 or 3 fights in a year, and then that following year step back up into that top 5 domain. I think we could see him be an effective Conor McGregor as we saw him before, and with a new skill set of maturity for which he will carry through. But he's got to get on it, and it depends how bad this break is. So hopefully this break is not too bad. Yeah, he's got to get better first. Then he can make some career choices. I would, in my heart of hearts, love to see him make a run for that title, but it has to be done in that way. But I think his personality is that he believes in himself so much. He would go in there against Charles Oliveira. He would jump in there. But these are just not the right fight for the lack of cage time that he's had. It's just not the right way, not the right path. But look, whatever happens. Even if he never fought again, it's been a great career. It's been interesting. It's been full of emotion. It's just never boring with the guy, and it makes me smile every time. I love what he's done for the sport. I really do.
Yeah, and I think he's changed the game for fighters financially. And look, some people like him, some people hate him. It kind of is what it is. But I think Conor McGregor, the person, is very different to Conor McGregor, the personality. And I think sometimes people, particularly people maybe who are less savvy to that side of boxing and MMA, they forget that, because I'm sure, I'd obviously never met him, but I'm sure that he's probably quite a humble, nice guy. That's the impression I get from when people who know him speak about him. But as a promoter of himself and his fights, and also the psychological side of fighting, he can do things which rub people the wrong way because he wants to get under their skin. That's how he beat Jose Aldo. We talked about it the other week. He beat Jose Aldo by completely messing with his head, getting under his skin. I know Jose Aldo made a mistake and he got knocked out for it.
He did.
It's kind of just the way it is. Right. So as you know, mate, we've got people who are watching regular now who are not necessarily properly into MMA and stuff like that. So they ask different types of questions. And one of the questions which we asked, Reese asked just before we did talked about Conor's fight was, obviously, so he says, with so many different fighting styles within MMA, is there a complete fighter out there who's just great at everything? So I'm going to twist that question slightly, and I'll say, who do you believe to be the absolute best all-round fighter? So the fighter who's the best at everything, or the most accomplished all-round fighter of all time. I know who I think, but I'm just interested in you because you've got way more knowledge than.
Yeah, it'd be hard to bet against Moutinho. Just beat Figueiredo. He's got incredible striking combinations, good cardio. He's got really good wrestling, and his wrestling chaining has to be top tier to beat someone like Figueiredo. And his grappling exchanges were absolutely flawless and tight and great decisions on the ground. I know in that weight division you don't see so much of their grappling because they're so quick to get back up to their feet so fast, but he just did great. I think he's very, very complete. And if we're going to talk about fighters of the past, I think the first truly complete person who demonstrated world-class demonstrations of striking, wrestling, and grappling was GSP. There's been so many great fighters. There's many
the two
complete fighters.
The two complete fighters which spring to mind for me are GSP and John Jones. Like, to me, they're
see, John Jones is never demonstrated amazing ground skills. He's just been hugely effective because he's been on top, and he's got an exceptional long reach and got some elbows off. But he's not someone who's demonstrated an all-round game. It's kind of
he's been good enough to get to deal with any situation, hasn't he? But he's never demonstrate exceptional ground skills, I suppose.
He improved his striking. He's got an exceptional long reach. So has he developed his skills as a striker? He could rely on those more and then use his wrestling capabilities to avoid the ground and keep it on the feet if he was beating someone with striking. But of course, he's got great wrestling as well. He's got a lot of tricky throws and trips in his game, and he can put people to the back, and he's got those dangerous elbows, of course, that we've seen in his early part of his career. But to say he was the most well-rounded, he was so good in two ranges that we never really got to see that third one. So I think it's hard to say that he was complete by any stretch, whereas GSP really has shown he's complete. He's beat better wrestlers than him on paper, and he's out-wrestled them. He's beat better strikers on paper because he's got the takedown threat, and he just got so many multiples of attack. And we see him, as a good example was when he fought Nick Diaz. I've used that as an example, who on paper is a better grappler, yet he out-grappled him because it was MMA. I think it's really hard to argue against GSP being one of the greatest of all in completion of his levels, no matter where it was at. But in the modern sense, for a relevant fight today, that Moutinho was amazing to me. Really, really super impressive.
Cool. Okay. And so the gold colours made some really good points actually throughout the last sort of half hour or so, and I'm really enjoying actually. He's clearly got quite a good knowledge of MMA. I think he said he was a coach. Just I'm reading through comments from YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, but he said Conor McGregor should sell his yacht and get back into the MMA mindset. In his opinion, I think that's a fair sort of thing. I think most people think along those lines, don't they? He's getting his focus back. But it's difficult to say he didn't have his focus for this fight either.
Yeah, but look, when you've got that kind of money, you're going to have a different type of lifestyle. Yeah, and when you've got access to almost limitless money, I mean, not limitless, but limitless in terms of what it can give you for life experiences, man, life's a big playground when you've got that kind of money. Of course, there are distractions, and I think it's absolutely right. I think this is what he was aiming towards. Yeah, you have to get back focused, but for many of the fighters, the focus is to make a living, and he doesn't need that type of focus anymore. So maybe this is what's made Conor McGregor, or part of what's made Conor McGregor foul at the highest order, along with some of the other things that I mentioned. I think it was a collective set of situations and circumstances that have led to Conor McGregor not quite cutting it at the top tier. The cage time,
the boxing,
coming away from the MMA and training the boxing extensively, and also the lifestyle change. His life must be so hugely different from the time that he was moving up the ranks in even the first handful of fights in UFC.
Yeah, and just very quickly, Gold Color also said he felt Stephen Thompson didn't look himself tonight. He felt he looked tired, and he also said Carlos Condit had chances but just didn't fire off enough returns to get going. Would you agree
Absolutely
with that?
agree with that. Yeah, perfect analysis. I can't really. Oh, you can add to it, but nothing more than reiterating what was just said there. Yeah, for Thompson, he did get entered in on that single a little bit too easy, but he did have a really wide stance. I just think it was great game plan by Gilbert Burns, to be honest. I think Gilbert Burns just put together the perfect strategy. I think the only thing we could add in with Stephen Thompson, if he was going to get entered in on the single with the head on the inside like it was, he should have just been putting him into some kind of physical deficit by putting in those elbows. I just don't think he was active enough with his strikes in the clinch to put Burns under pressure, trying to get what he wanted, which is to get it on the ground.
Interesting, mate. Interesting. Right, we're way over time. The football kicks off in just over an hour. I want to thank everybody who's joined in the chat, asked questions, and of course, most of all, our guest, WBC Commonwealth champion, Gavin, the Merthyr Mexican Gwynne. That was real good. I really enjoyed him having a chat with Gav about boxing and stuff like that. We will be back next week, back in our regular time slot of 8 o'clock live on Sunday. So that's 8 o'clock UK time for our American viewers, which I think is 3 o'clock Eastern. We'll be with another guest from either MMA and boxing. It could be Cage Warriors, could be UFC, could be a boxer, could be a coach. We just don't know. We like to have the best guests we can get. And please do join us. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That is the most direct way to support us at the moment. But most of all, spread the word. Tell your friends. And we'll be back next week live. Join us. Cheers, guys. Take care. God bless. Do we want Italy or England to win? Tell me in the comments. Go.
Defending champion